first and foremost, happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath. Hope everybody had a blessed week. Glad to see everyone who's able to join us, those who are online. This is the SC Community Church of Christ. My name is Archbishop Shamar.
And I'm Bishop Arak.
All right. And we'll be bringing this week's Shabbat lesson. All right. I want to say all praises be unto the Most High Almighty, Ahai Yeshua Christ, our Lord and Savior, especially in these important times right now where we see nations are fighting over him, his property, everything. We just want to send all praises because we know that his power is real. We know that his power is for real. And we know that people are fighting over things that are attached to his power. So it just brings, constant appreciation for our Lord and Savior and knowing that we're on the right path. All right, so with that being said, we're going to continue with a lesson that we did a couple weeks ago, Pen of the Scribes, all right, which we were going into what is a scribe, the scribes of the past, what they did, and we got into what a scribe could be in today's time. All right. So we did go into a scribe, and we went into what a scribe was. All right. So just for a refresher, a scribe was an individual who wrote down or documented records of things that happened. All right, so when you're documenting a record of things that happen, it has to be exacts, all right, because you're recording something that, it has to be, it has to be shown to a next individual. You have to send on the message, all right? You have to copy that exact same message so that what you are seeing is the exact same thing the other individual can see, all right? And that comes with accuracy. All right, so the word used for scribe is actually attached to an instrument, right? And we went into what that instrument is. It's called an engineer scribe, and they're called scribers, right? And a scribe was a piece of metal, all right, a piece of metal that marked out outlines, all right? And it's different from pen outlines because pen and different things, the outlines are kind of fatter, whereas the scribe is very sharp and exact in its tracing. All right, so and going back to Hebrew, that Hebrew uses words that have like pictures that depict things. The word that they wanted to use to describe someone who did this was an instrument, all right, that was this sharp, all right, and it was used this way to show you kind of the nature of what that individual is. They're supposed to be copying things exactly down. And we've seen that as we went into that is lawyers, so people with law, because if they're gonna look at the law, they have to tell you exactly what's written there. Those people that do your home titles, because if you're saying, hey, this transaction happened, you need someone to record that transaction properly, all right? When you're saying someone is born, all right, and you send that to a recorder or a registrator, all right, these are a registrar, all right, and these are all different types of positions that have that same thing where they're documenting things, and that job comes with scribing, all right, documenting, copying information and putting it down, all right, for others to see, all right, and for history, all right, we've seen that was done in Israel by the Levites. And out of the Levites, there was chosen men who were chosen to be, per se, scribes. All right, and we've seen that most people, when they think of scribes, especially in the Bible, they're thinking about, they just do the law or they translate the Bible. And what we did that last time was show you that it's much wider than the Bible. It's your lawyers, it's your people who take house titles, it's anything to do with things of that situation. All right, when it comes to law, when it comes to documents, when it comes to historical records, anything to do with that, all right, birthday, birth certificate, anything like that. These are all scribers who are scribing down things that's happened, all right, especially when other people can't. So that was the next thing about them. They were special people because other people couldn't scribe like that. All right, so we're going into part 2 of the lesson. We're going to start off at Isaiah 53 and 1.
The book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 53, verse 1. Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed?
All right, so who shall believe our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? We always go to the scripture because knowing how the Most High operated in the Old Testament, he operated in secrecy. He always does. All right, and he sent the word of the Lord, which is Christ, which is our Lord and Savior, to a chosen vessel. And that chosen vessel was shown by the word of the Lord, or told by the word of the Lord, everything that was echoed from the Most High, God the Father. And then that individual was sent out to the people to declare, thus saith the Most High. This often happened in nighttime, so they would come out and they would say, thus saith the Most High, and declare these things. False prophets, seeing how these things operated, would now come and they would say the Most High gave them a vision or visited them, and this is what they said. So it's always on the people to come to their own understanding and comprehension to who is dealing with the Most High and who's shown the power of the Most High. And just going back to the wilderness, when the people don't believe and they don't have that, they're asked for signs. All right, and God told us he's not really dealing with signs. He gave them the sign of Jonah. Christ is the sign. All right, so in this day and age, if you're looking for a sign to believe, that is the wrong way to go about it. You have to use your senses. You have to study. You have to do all the things that's necessary. Seek the Lord. Seek wisdom. God gave us everything that we need to comprehend. All our senses are given for this. Nothing else. Nothing else that we use them for is important. This is what they were made for the gospel. So there's no excuse. All right, so with that being said, we're going to go into the scriptures to make sure that they're translated, interpreted, and taught correctly.
This is the book of the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 8, starting at the 8th verse. How do ye say we are wise, and the law of the Lord is with us? Lo, certainly in vain made he it. The pen of the scribes is in vain. The wise men are ashamed. They are dismayed and taken. Lo, they have rejected the word of the Lord. And what wisdom is in them?
Right? So the pen of the scribes is in vain. All right? How do they say they are wise? All right? When they've been taken. All right? The wise men have been taken. They've rejected the word of the Lord. The scribes' pen, we're learning, and what a lot of people don't understand is that they're vain. And we were breaking down because we're starting from the Bible, but we're showing now how this just stretches out to everything in the world. So God gave us a warning about the scribes, and people weren't really, taking in the warning of the scribes. All right, because they're thinking it's only biblical, and even the biblical one, a lot of people don't take it to be like, you know what, these got, I'm tainted. Mostly the people who deal with the records, because outside people, the reason why they don't believe because they're saying, hey, I can't believe in these records because I believe that they got tainted anyway. They just make up that excuse without having really research or understanding, or maybe they did, but they're just looking for an excuse to not deal with the Bible. All right, but many people who actually believe in the records don't look at it in the integral eyes, like, you know what, I have to filter this intricately with doctrine and understanding because the words or what's being said here may not add up. Somebody could have put something there that's not there. All right, but this is the warning that's given by Jeremiah. He's seeing that. All right, and if we take that further from the Bible, this goes out to, you got to look at your home title correctly. You got to look at your birth certificate. Anything that a scribe touch in this world, you got to look at with like, did you record what I'm believing you're supposed to be recording, or are you recording and interpreting it a different way? All right, and that's the problem that's been happening from the Bible up on to modern day time, from the scriptures up into documents that you have in your wallet, your home title, your car title, your birth certificates. All right, lawyer stuff, legal stuff. Anything you're dealing with this scribe, you have to be aware that they are copying and saying what you want and translating what you want. Because that's the thing with the copyists. They have the advantage because they're usually the person who only understands. That's why they're the copyists. to make sure they're copying exactly what's being shown. All right, so the other individuals could understand. All right, and we'll go to one more start out scripture from the last one. We're gonna go to Luke 20:46.
The book of St. Luke, chapter 20, starting at the 46th verse. Beware of the scribes, which desire to walk in long robes, and love greetings in the markets, and in the highest seats in the synagogues, and the chief rooms at feasts, which devour widows' houses, and for a show make long prayers. The same shall receive greater damnation.
All right, so beware of the scribes. This was the warning, which desire to walk in long robes. They desire to be righteous individuals, priests, things like that. That's who wear these long robes these times. They love greetings in the markets. All right, they love to be the people that be like, hey, how you doing? You know, all that charity stuff. Be the person that's helping. Oh, he's the big job individual with the big position, with the knows the law. All right, the highest seats in the synagogue. So once again, that's going back into the priests. They're priests as well. So we went into last week how scribers came away from having to be priests, and that's how we have the scribes of today that aren't really connected sometimes to priests or the Bible. All right, because now they came out with scribes who don't really have to be priests, and this is the problem because the scribes are not dealing with the law of the God, right? So they gave us all these warnings. All right, they're gonna receive greater damnation. So this was the warning from Christ. All right, so we're gonna jump back into today what we're gonna be going through. All right, we're starting at page 10, and we're gonna be going into the Jewish Encyclopedia, and the Jewish Encyclopedia is gonna give us the origin and meaning that it has for scribes.
Scribes by Isidore Singer. Let's continue here. Origin and meaning. 1. Body of teachers whose office was to interpret the law to the people. Their organization beginning with Ezra, who was their chief, and terminating with Simon or Simeon the Just. The original meaning of the Hebrew word Sopharim was, quote, people who know how to write, end quote. And therefore, the royal officials who were occupied in recording in the archives the proceedings of each day were called scribes.
All right, so the body of teachers whose office was to interpret the law of the people. All right, so this is what a scribe was. Once again, a body of teachers whose office was to interpret the law to the people. So they're there to interpret the law to people because people don't really understand. So that's when it comes to, hey, I have a house problem, you know, I have a marriage thing, whatever it is, you have a problem, you come to them. They're supposed to go to God's stuff and copy that law and tell you that exactly how it is. All right, that's what they were there to do, interpret the law to the people. All right, that began with Ezra, all right, who was their chief. All right, and once again, it went back to people who know how to write. So back then, a lot of people didn't know how to write. These were special positions that, oh, you know how to write. Because once again, writing is not natural. No animal outside writes. All right, so this is a high spiritual thing that people are doing that we take for granted even right now. People are like, oh, I'm writing. This is something people couldn't do. All right, this was someone high up, educated, able to write and copy. Right? You could only see and speak per se, but not copy down and understand. People could even understand the writings.
Because they couldn't read.
Yeah, they couldn't read nothing. That's not how they communicated. They communicated with, voice. Yeah. Oral communication, like all animals do. I'm pretty sure they don't know they know what they're saying, but they don't know how to write what they're saying, I'm pretty sure. Right, that's how animals communicate. I don't think the birds know how to write down their language, right? They're just saying the language. So once again, we're seeing how far us, especially as mankind, have came, right, in our understanding. It's up there, right? Especially now, I don't think a lot of people know how much it changed since Christ came, right? Our comprehension for spiritual things, not seeing something and taking it for face value. All right, but continue for us.
But as the art of writing was known only to the intelligent, the term scribe became synonymous with wise men. Later, in the time of Ezra, the designation was applied to the body of teachers who, as stated above, interpreted the law to the people. Ezra himself is styled, quote, a ready scribe in the law of Moses, end quote. Indeed, he might be correctly so called for the two reasons. Inasmuch as he could write or copy the law, and at the same time was an able interpreter of it.
All right, so once again, the art of writing was known only to the intelligent. All right, you know what? Let me even get where that was, because it's in the book of Enoch. I don't know why I didn't go there. Let me get it for us real quick. Enoch 69 and 7.
This is the book of Enoch, chapter 69, starting at the 7th verse. And from his hand they have proceeded against those who dwell on the earth from that day and forevermore. And the fourth was named Penumia. He taught the children of men the bitter and the sweet, and he taught them all the secrets of their wisdom. And he instructed mankind in writing with ink and paper, and thereby many sinned from eternity to eternity and until this day.
All right, so he was teaching mankind how to write. Once again, mankind didn't know how to do this. This is a spiritual thing. When the Most High was coming, the Most High was teaching his scribes how to write, his chosen one how to understand and comprehend. All right, what Satan once again did through the fallen ones was teach sinful man these things. All right, so sinful man can now come and deceive because he knows how to do these things. This is how everything was going on at those times. All right, so these was the angels. So this chapter in Enoch, chapter 69, is speaking about the angels and what they taught mankind. And this one, Phenumu, taught them different secrets of wisdom and instructed mankind in writing, ink, and in paper. He was instructing them in writing. All right, so this is where mankind learned how to write. It started to go past just scribes, all right? And even right now, it's not just scribes who know how to read and write, because once again, people don't come out reading and writing. They're teaching them how to read and write, and they're not differentiating, oh, this person just shouldn't learn how to read and write, right? When they were doing that, that happened against us, all right? As a people, in slavery. They're like, you know what? They don't need to read and write, okay? Because if they read and write, guess what? They're going to be able to understand the things that's going on and come back as a people. All right. So once again, Ezra, the scribe. Scribes in the Bible, Jewish Encyclopedia, body of teachers who interpreted the law for the people. And this in our day and time is anybody who does anything law or legal activity document for you. All right. So we're going to go to the Old Testament, actually in the Apocrypha. We're going to go to first Ezra's 8 and 3, and we're going to go to Ezra's the scribe. And we're just going to get a look at what a righteous scribe was doing then and what it took to inscribe a document. Because once again, because we've gotten smarter, I think people don't understand all that it took to inscribe a record and translate a record, especially in a next language. All right. So we're going to go to 1 Ezra's 8 and 3.
It's the book of 1 Ezra's, chapter 8, starting at the 3rd verse in the Apocrypha. This Ezra's went up from Babylon as a scribe, being very ready in the law of Moses that was given by the God of Israel.
All right, so this Ezra was a scribe being very ready in the law of Moses. So once again, a scribe always ready in the law of God. Big red flag is that scribes, most that you come across, don't deal with the law of God. So that's a big strike in today's modern day time, that the person who's inscribing things for you doesn't deal with the law of God or can't interpret the law of God. All right, so this is a big red flag. All right, going back to Ezra, the righteous scribe, very ready in the law of Moses, not any other specific law, the law of Moses. And every scribe still needs to know that. Why? Because all law always goes back to the Bible, whether people like it or not. They use the Bible for their law. That's where they go to find God's laws, not any other religious text. All right, so continue for us.
Verse 4, and the king did him honor, for he found grace in his sight in all his requests. There went up with him also certain of the children of Israel, of the priests of the Levites, of the holy singers, porters, and ministers of the temple unto Jerusalem. In the 7th year of the reign of Artaxerxes, in the 5th month, this was the king's 7th year. For they went from Babylon in the 1st day of the 1st month, and came to Jerusalem, according to the prosperous journey which the Lord gave them. For Ezra had very great skill, so that he omitted nothing of the law and commandments of the Lord, but taught all Israel the ordinances and judgments.
All right, so Ezra's here at this time. They're being free once again. A scribe comes up. The scribe isn't able to, deal and speak back with the king. King comes to understanding. All right, and they're allowing them to go to Jerusalem. All right, and it shows you here that Ezra had very great skill, so that he omitted nothing of the law and commandments of the Lord, but taught all Israel the ordinance and judgment. So you're supposed to teach the people as a scribe. You're supposed to, that's your job, is to interpret to other individuals the law of God. That's what's supposed to be happening. All right, and that's what's not happening in today's time. When they go to you, they're interpreting what they see, but they're not interpreting the law of God. All right, continue for us.
Verse 8, now the copy of the commission, which was written from Artaxerxes the king, and came to Ezra the priest and reader of the law of the Lord, is this that followeth. King Artaxerxes unto Ezra the priest and reader of the law of the Lord sendeth greeting.
All right, so I just stopped it right there, but just to see you how he's addressing Ezra. All right, once again, he's a priest and reader of the law of the Lord, and even when the king is speaking to him, he knows that this priest is a reader of the law. He's a scribe. He's the one that can interpret and understand. All right, so that's the attitude that a scribe is supposed to have. That is the foundation a scribe is supposed to have. They're supposed to start off with the Bible, be ready in interpretation for the people. All right, and that's not what's happening today. They're not basing their stuff on the Bible, and they're not trying to interpretate for you. All right, they only interpretate for you for their benefit. All right, but not to let you know or understand. Most of the time, people don't understand what they're doing. They just pay and they go and do what they're doing, but they're not really interpreting to you what's being done here, right? So we're at Enoch 104 and 9.
This is the book of Enoch, chapter 104, starting at the 9th verse. Be not godless in your hearts, and lie not, and alter not the words of uprightness, nor charge with lying the words of the Holy Great One, nor take account of your idols. For all your lying and all your godlessness issue not in righteousness, but in great sin.
All right, so this is in Enoch. This chapter 104 is speaking about what's going to happen in the future and what's taking place with God's record. So Enoch seen this in his time. All right, and he's speaking to the scribes. This is actually Enoch speaking to the scribes in Enoch 104. Be not godless in your heart. Lie not. Alter not the words of uprightness. All right, so this is a direct message to the scribe, the same way Christ came and gave warning to the scribe. All right, be not godless in your hearts. Lie not. Alter not the words of uprightness. Alter not God's words, you scribe. Be not godless in your hearts. They're godless right now because most of them don't even believe in the Bible. All right? They don't even believe in the Bible. Nor charge with lying. No. We can go to the Continue for us. Okay, you know we did. We read to great sin. Okay. Nor charge with lying the words of the Holy Great One. All right. Nor take account of your idols. So they're going away from the word of the Lord. They're dealing with false gods, false things that are not God. Whatever that may not be. That might not be a statue today, but it's not the Most High God, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Then it's a false God. All right. For all your lying, all your godlessness, issue not in righteousness, but in great sin. The scribes are in great sin if they're not inscribing correctly what's to be said. All right, and what is the law of God. Continue for us.
Verse 10. And now I know this mystery, that sinners will alter and pervert the words of righteousness in many ways, and will speak wicked words and lie, and practice great deceits, and write books concerning their words.
All right. Once again, giving us a little insight in what the scribes are doing. I know this mystery. It's a mystery. A lot of people don't know that the stuff that they have has been inscribed inaccurately. All right. That the sinners, the sinful scribes, have altered and perverted the words of righteousness in many ways. Many ways. They speak wicked words, they lie, they practice great deceits by inscribing documents for you and telling you that this document is now, or this thing that you purchased is now yours, and they gave you a title to it when that title was not, it doesn't really say that's yours. All right, there's a loophole in it. All right, these are the great deceits that people don't understand is being happening. You purchase something, you get something that says that it's yours, a title, but whoever inscribed it in a way where you don't understand that there's a loophole in there where somebody else actually has control if they want to come in there, even though they might have only a 1% interest in that. But if that 1% ever changes, the law in that document makes them the real owner. All right, these are the great deceits. All right, which obviously that's secondary to what they're doing to the Bible. All right, so they practice great deceits. They write books concerning their words. All right, continue for us.
Verse 11. But when they write down truthfully all my words in their languages, and do not change or diminish aught from my words, but write them all down truthfully, all that I first testified concerning them, then I know another mystery, that books will be given to the righteous and the wise to become a cause of joy and uprightness and much wisdom. And to them shall the books be given, and they shall believe in them and rejoice over them. And then shall all the righteous who have learned therefrom all the paths of uprightness be recompensed.
All right. But when they shall write down truthfully all my words in their languages. All right. So he's saying that they're not writing down all his words truthfully, but there's going to come a time when it's going to start being written down truthfully, all their words in their languages. So this is not just a one nation scribe. This is to all the scribes of the earth, because he's speaking about all the languages. All right. All the languages have to translate the word of God. All right. We need different scribes in all the languages to translate them. And today we're going to show, a little of, hopefully we get there today, but we're going to show a little of, when a record of ours is inscribed for somebody else. All right. But when they write all of these things down truthfully, we're going to show when the Bible they try to start writing and inscribing the words truthfully. All right. He knows another thing is going to happen. All right. Mystery is going to happen. Another mystery. Books will be given to the righteous. And these are the books where other churches, they might look at us and be like, why you guys are going into that? Why are you going into the gospel of peace? All right. Why are you going into the Apocrypha? All right. Why are you going into the book of Jasher? All right. Why are you going into the Dead Sea Scrolls? All right. Why are you going into these New Testament church fathers? All right. Why are you going into the book of Enoch? Why are you going into these different things? All right. Because once again, these books, they were hidden, they start coming out, and they're there to show the truth of what's happening. All right. And these books, a lot of people don't believe it. So a lot of people that we were coming from, they didn't believe it. We're going into different books, but they're not seeing that we started to understand that you have to read the Bible a certain way and understand that scribes touch the Bible. And you just have to now comprehend the doctrine of God through the records to see when an inconsistency pops up. All right. So we're going to go to Revelation 22 and 18.
The book of Revelation, chapter 22, starting at the 18th verse. For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book. If any man shall add unto these things, God shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book. And if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life, and out of the holy city, and from the things which are written in this book.
All right, so it shows you here. For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of prophecy. Any man shall add unto these things, God shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book. So he's speaking to the scribes, all right, the scribes that would try to inscribe and change the records at that time, specifically the books of Revelation, all right, the book of Revelation. That if they add on to this, and this is another warning to the scribes, you do anything, the plagues that's inside of these things and the prophecy, the same thing gonna happen to that scribe. All right, so once again, being a scribe is a serious thing. And this is what comes, especially being a teacher, you're like a scribe as well. So this is why when I was put in that seat, I took that very serious, because now if you're saying I have to tell you what's being said over there, I have to make sure that is as accurate as possible. All right, I have to be a true scribe, because anything else is a lazy scribe. I mean, I'm just saying, I didn't really look into that, but I heard. If I'm dealing with God, I can't be with, I heard, I thought, I think. It has to be exact, and not what I think or what someone heard. You have to get the exact. It has to be as exact as you can get it. All right. We're going to go to Isaiah 28 and 9 real quick. Let me jump there real quick.
This is the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 28, starting at verse 9. Whom shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breasts. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, and line upon line, here a little, and there a little.
Whom shall he teach knowledge, and to whom shall he make understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast. Once again, because who can understand to interpret? Somebody has to understand. All right. And even today, where people are understanding to read and write, they're not understanding the deception in the reading and writing. So they're just reading and writing and reading and writing and copying now, but they can't see that things are inaccurate in what's scribed. So what we learned last week too is that once something is scribed or inscribed, it's hard to take away that mark. So that's why a lot of people don't like to use that, because you can't erase what is scribed like that. All right, so that's why it's hard when a scribe inscribes something in history or anything to kind of get that out. All right, and that's what comes before the scriber, before they inscribe or finish the scribing or the outlining of the mark and actually do the outline of what's there. They have to ensure, all right, because once that is scribed, can't erase it. All right, it's very hard. You're gonna have to rub out that whole layer at the top there. You have to do a whole what do we call that? Buffering, buffering out that whole thing. All right, and that's why it's so hard when some documents or records go out that's inscribed. It's hard to get it back. And one thing is the name of the Lord that we, touched on that last time. But we're gonna go into the Aramaic of that same scripture.
All right, this is the same book, the prophet Isaiah, out of the George Lamsa translation, Aramaic Peshitta. Isaiah the 28th chapter, starting at the 9th verse. To whom shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make to understand the report? Those who are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast. For filth is upon filth, filth upon filth, vomit upon vomit, vomit upon vomit, a little here and a little there.
All right. So in this one, it says, to whom shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make understand the report? Remember, we went to the report at the beginning, Isaiah 53, who shall believe our report? Who shall he make understand the report? All right, we're understanding the report. Those who are weaned from the milk, drawn from the breast. All right, those who have weaned off of wisdom. We're the ones who understand the report. All right, and then in this one it says, filth is upon filth, filth upon filth, vomit upon vomit, vomit upon vomit, here a little, there a little, giving a warning that filth is upon filth in these records. Now we went to the Aramaic one because the KJV one just says precept upon precept, line upon line. So this is a scribe that did this, because the Aramaic, once again, the Peshitta, going back to its purity, that's why they deal with the Peshitta. But somebody here, because it's not to say, because the scriptures does have precept shall be upon precept in there. That is what it's supposed to be, but it's not supposed to be there. All right, a warning is there. And the warning is there to tell you, don't just go in the Bible and say, oh, I'm precept in this and that, but understand the doctrine of what's happening, because scribes here in here. And can you tell that vomit is upon vomit, filth upon filth is within these records? Who can understand that? All right, don't just precepts. If you go to other people, they'll be like, this is how I prove it to you. Go through all through the Bible to show you all the different places it could be at. Not knowing the scribe is all up in there. It's not the Bible you have to show me at. I'm showing you the inconsistency, and I know that it's inaccurate, and you have to come to that comprehension. But they're based on, I'm going to go through the Bible and show you these inconsistencies, and why is it written here or there or there in all these places. All right. So once again, this is another warning. So we just have to give all these examples and understanding of a scribe, what they do, the changing of the words, the warnings to them, the prophecies to them, because now we're going to go and we're going to start to get into modern day history here. We're going to go to the Vatican, because these are the leader people who are the scribes when it comes to Christian books, Christian records, all right, which they lay claim to. All right, so we're going to focus in on these particular group of scribes, because they are the leaders of the Christian world, who are Israel today. All right, spiritual Israel. All right, we're going to give an understanding through them, because they're the scribe. They're the Levitical scribe of today's world. All right. And obviously we know not all Vatican people are scribes. When we say the Vatican, we're saying them as a group, because they have scribes within them. Their scribes are the ones in control of the things. So when I'm saying the Vatican, I'm not saying all these people are scribes. They have particular scribes within them, but they're from this library and this history. All right, so we're going to go to the history of the Vatican Library.
Prior to the Vatican Library, there was no information on collections in the pre-Lateran period, probably because this was a period of persecution of the Christians, which did not allow for a specified location to house and maintain a collection of documents. Certainly, the Christians copied and distributed the sacred scriptures and copies of writings of the early church fathers that were kept in various places.
All right, so once again, prior to the Vatican Library, no information on collection of pre-Lateran period of documents. All right, because the Christians were being persecuted. The scribes, they're starting off their library, but you know what? Let's persecute those with a library and who have records and destroy their records. All right, destroy those scribal records. Any record that could, show impurities in their records. Destroy these people. All right, and now they start building up a library. You get what I'm saying? So they start building up libraries that allowed for collection of the documents.
This is kind of what crossed my mind when you said that, the importance of history, because when it comes to certain wars and whatnot, they'll try to destroy their libraries because that's where things are documented. So if you can almost completely eradicate that, a lot of your history will be lost. As such, and that's kind of what happened to the children of Israel when it comes to their own law.
Correct. Our documents, we don't have government documents. They don't have no record of our government document is the Bible that they had to translate to get their laws from. That's what comes we were able to see a little of what was happening. We would have had more in-depth documents, but we have this outline of, the Bible and God's word and just us making appearances as the main characters, but not a direct of, day to day, this is what's happened with all these families and people. We're learning about just important people, right? But we don't know the whole history. The government has all the documents of everybody and everything that could go into everyone's life and stuff, connect everybody. All right, we don't have that. That got destroyed, and that's why it's hard for us to come back as a people, because that got destroyed. All right, but continue for us.
The Vatican Library, a chronology.
All right, so we're gonna go through the chronology of the Vatican Library, just adding up to certain recent dates. So continue for us.
Pope Nicholas V.
Read the years for us.
Okay, 1451. My apologies. Pope Nicholas V. conceives of a library, quote, for the common convenience of the learned, end quote, and the Vatican Library is born. Nicholas's collection numbered about 1,160 books.
All right, so Nicholas V, this is the starter. He said there needs to be a library for the common convenience of the learned. So just for learned people, once again. And the Vatican Library was born. All right, so that's Pope Nicholas V. So that's the starter of the library. All right, continue for us.
1475. Pope Sixtus IV brings the library to life, installing the books in a restored suite of rooms, building up the collection, and naming Bartholomew Plantina as the Vatican's first formal librarian.
All right, so Bartholomew Plantina, the first Vatican librarian, collecting the books of the scribes. All right, continue.
The year 1470 to 1525, during the High Renaissance, the library grew enormously. By 1481, an handwritten catalog by Platina showed 3,500 entries. As from its inception, the collections were available without restriction regarding the reader's religious or other views.
All right, so this is where people were going to get the records, and the records are there, but most of them are in different languages. So a scribe needs to go there to see the record, to scribe them. And this is where a lot of the translation this comes from. They have to go to the library to translate it out there so that you can get it on the outside. All right, that's a lot of what's going on. All right, so continue for us.
The year 1517, Protestant Reformation begins.
All right, so 1517, all the church, especially in the West, I should say, they're together. And 1517, they start to break away. A group of Protestants led by Martin Luther. All right, and this is a key factor in the library as well over there. So continue for us.
The year 1570 to 1610, Counter-Reformation. The library inevitably suffered from the introduction of the Index of Banned Books, in parentheses 1558, and some limitation on access were imposed.
All right, so a counter-reformation was formed. So like, all right, we have a reformation of people. We have a counter-reformation. All right, and introduction of Index of Banned Books. So they start banning books out of there now. All right, with the counter-reformation. All right, and limitations on access were imposed. And this is funny too, because especially, I'm pretty sure some of the books they were using against them, and just from experience or past, when especially people who deal with these records get a book used on them, they have the mindset that, yo, that you use this book on me, that book is bad now. They try to find something out of there to be like, yo, we ain't dealing with this book no more. That book that they done went in to take that thing to point at me, that book is false.
We say heretical.
Yeah, that's a heretical book. All right, we don't deal with that book no more. Even though they have history of going through it, it's in your library. Clearly, you collected it, and now you banned it. All right, so just to put emphasis on that. So continue.
Mid-1600s, the library again welcomed unfettered scholarly pursuit, including by Protestants. It acquired vast new holdings of manuscripts and books, most notably a spectacular assortment of items from distant lands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
The year 1785, Pope Pius VI strictly limits the consultation of manuscripts, prompting Spanish priest Juan Andres to accuse the Pope of overseeing a, quote, cemetery of books, not a library,
right.
end quote.
So once again, they're on the Protestant counter Reformation, all right? And they are not dealing with a lot of the books, all right? And they're saying, you know what, and this is what we see now, because when you see the books, it just looks like, it looks like dead books. They don't look like a library where, people go and they use the stuff, right? It just looks like, you guys just have like a whole bunch of stuff in here, like with dust all over it and stuff.
Locked up.
Right? And that's why they come that you guys are not allowing people to see the books. These people act like they wanted to study and this. They're getting the books to hold them hostage from people. And we're going to see as further we get along. Continue.
The year 1883, Pope Leo XIII formally declares the library open to qualified researchers.
All right, so the library was closed from the Counter Reformation. They've been closing the library, all right? And now it took all the way up. And the Counter Reformation was, 1570? All right, it took all the way up to 1833, all right?
1883.
1883. All right, almost 300 something years later for them to open it back up to qualified researchers only. So qualified people that they think is good enough to be a scribe. And this is interesting because we're going to get to it. We're going to show you what qualifies you to go see one of these scribal books and all what you got to go do to be able to see an original copy of a text and be able to inscribe it down. So what people need to understand that any book that you got, a scribe went to it first. The scribe went through harsh things on what he had to do to get a hold of that original thing to tell you, I recorded from an original document. All right. And this is why a lot of the times we'll see it always going to say Lord in there or the name Jesus, because they have certain rules the scribe has to abide by to get access to even do this. All right, but continue for us.
The year 1929 to 1930, the year 1927 to the year 1939. The Library of Congress and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace helped modernize the Vatican Library's book catalog system.
All right, so they start modernizing the book catalog system, and you're going to see that it's so off that a lot of the books, because modern day time, a lot of the libraries have their records digitized. The Vatican's not digitizing their records, all right? That's a big problem because how can other people from the world see it? We're able to see a lot of things because of the internet, these things, all right? But they're not trying to modernize that because they don't want people to look at it once again, all right? But continue.
The year 1992, Vatican Library holdings number almost 2 million printed books and serials, 75,000 Latin, Greek, Arabic, Hebrew, Persian, Ethiopian, Syriac, and other manuscripts from the 2nd century AD on 65,000 units of archival volumes in 23 deposits of fondi, 100,000 prints, engravings, maps, and drawings, 330,000 Greek, Roman, and papal coins and medals.
All right, so we've seen it turn from, they had 1,500 about books. They got now more than 2 million ancient manuscripts. All right. They have manuscripts from the 2nd century AD. They have 65,000 units of archival volumes. All right. 100,000 of prints, engravings, maps, all these. And they made it their thing to go and collect these things out of war, out of any place they went. So they have a vast library, which is why when we're talking about scribery, ancient scribes, we're putting emphasis on the Vatican Library and their scribe because they have collected other people's records, all right? Because they're saying they control all these things, all right? So we're going to continue here. We're going to go now and show you how the Bible, or how the Bible, all right, was translated into the Greek and went to another library. So this is an example how it goes from one scribal library to another library and why they need the original documents. Not like, we're out here and somebody wrote the Hebrew thing and you're scribing that Hebrew thing. That's not a scribe because you want the actual thing that God or an individual scribes so that you can look at it and then say you translated it. That's a true translation. You cannot say, yo, somebody else looked at the original document and wrote it in Hebrew for you. You looked at the Hebrew, and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to translate it into English now. That's not how it works. You need the original document to be like, I'm scribing from here and there. And that's why the library is important, where the original document is. All right, so we're going to go into a little historical text. This is out the New Advent, and it's a part on the history of the Septuagint.
By far, the most famous libraries of the Greek world were those of Pergamum and Alexandria. The former, which had been formed by the kings of the family of Attilius from about the year 200 BC, must have been a very remarkable collection. Modern archaeological exploration has identified the site of this library with certain rooms in the precincts of the temple of the temple of Athene. As for the books themselves, we learned from Plutarch that 200,000 volumes, or rather rolls, were removed by Mark Antony to Alexandria and given to Cleopatra to replace the library which had been accidentally destroyed by fire in Julius Caesar's Egyptian campaign. The library so destroyed, which was known as that of the Museum, was formed by Ptolemy Philadelphus about 260 BC. It is to this library that the legend attaches of the origin of the Septuagint, as recorded in the apocryphal but very ancient, quote, letter of Aristus, end quote.
All right, so they're showing you this library, Alexandria, the history, going down to it. All right, and this library that was formed, and this library that was formed in 260 BC, Ptolemy Philadelphus. All right, that this library was the one that received the records of the Septuagint translated into their language. All right, so what they wanted was their scribes and the Jews to work together to scribe that out of Hebrew into their language so it could come into their library. And the emphasis of this as well is to show you the beginning of these people who are now the Vatican, because at this time they're coming, this is the same type of people, all right, Greek going into the Roman, that they want Hebrew records in their library that aren't theirs. They're our records. They want it in their library though. All right, and this is the beginning of that. I want a copy of your record in my library. All right, and we blessed them with that copy of the record in their library. And this is how they got one, because there's no other language like that got a special, like, this is your translation for you that we gave to you, and you don't have people necessarily who are Hebrew like that. All right, but continue.
According to this legend, Demetrius Valerius, the keeper of the library, advised his master, King Ptolemy, to endeavor to obtain for it a translation of the law of the Jews. Envoys were accordingly dispatched to the high priest Eleazar of Jerusalem, who sent 70, or more exactly 72, scholars to Alexandria to make the Greek version required. The work was completed in 70 days, and the translation was read aloud by Demetrius and approved as final.
All right. So once again, this is somebody who was in the king's library. So we're seeing the things about libraries and having library. And they're like, yo, they seen the importance. I think you should have a copy of the Hebrew records in your library, King. King's like, you know, I think I should. Let me contact the Hebrews. Yo, I need a record of your book in my library. All right. Once again, how can you do that? This doesn't just happen. You need special people. He sends 70 special people, 70 scribes. All right, there you go. You can work with your people in their language, and we can get that exact out of there into your language. All right, now we have a translation. This is how translating happens. Right, you have to go to the original document, so what the people have, and translate it out of that. And you need scholars and smart people, because no one understands that, and to ensure that it's translated accurately. All right. So we're going to go to a little more history of the Vatican Archives. All right, so we're going to go into the history of the Vatican Archives. All right, and some understanding on this. So once again, this is the library of the main scribes of the world who want to scribe ancient texts, especially when it comes to religious Hebrew texts, biblical texts, knowledge of those things, maps of the old world, anything to do with that, they're saying that they're the leader and owner of. All right? They're saying that they want that. They're saying that they want that. All right? So we're going to start off. We're going to go to history of the Vatican Archives.
Known today as the Vatican Apostolic Archives, the Vatican Secret Archives is the central repository in the Vatican City that houses all disseminated by the Holy See, or See of Rome. The Pope, as sovereign of Vatican City, holds ownership of the material preserved in the archives until his death or resignation, with possession passing on to his successor.
All right, so the Pope, who's the sovereign, he owns all those records. They're all his once it comes in there. He's the owner of that library and all records, and it passes on to the next individual. All right, and they call him the Pope. I call him Mr. Francis. Continue.
The Vatican Secret Archives include state papers, correspondence, account books, and many other documents that the Church has acquired over the centuries. Under the orders of Pope Paul V, the Secret Archive was separated from the Vatican Library in the 17th century.
All right, so once again, we are making emphasis. We went to the Vatican Library. We're at the Vatican Archives, and we went into what the archives is. They had 65,000 units of different texts within there. But the Secret Archives is things, once again, we don't want you to read. Secret, kind of like banned, can't see, can't touch. All right, and they have the main library to let people see, but then there's a secret one, and Pope V did that once again to battle out or combat the Reformation that was happening from the Protestants. All right, we'll continue for us.
As a result, scholars had very limited access to its records, and the archive remained closed to outsiders. However, in the late 19th century, Pope Leo XIII opened the archive to scholars, thousands of whom now study some of its documents annually.
All right, so it's the archives that people are really interested in, because they're like, why do they not want people to look at those records? All right, and it's only up until the 19th century that they start allowing people to even come in that archive. So this is hundreds of years of records, translations, that they're not allowing people to come and see up until the 19th century. All right, and this is what they're doing to ensure that people or scribes can't come and get original documents to inscribe new things. Because once again, once something is inscribed and gone out, it's hard to uninscribe that unless the scribe goes back and does it all over again and gets his hand on some material that's different. This is why it's key when records like Dead Sea Scroll or other records outside of their library pop up, and someone could go and look at those translations, because this is outside of their library. This is a translation from back then. Let me get my eyes on it to translate it correctly. Let me scribe it correctly before man touches it. All right, so continue for us.
What makes the Vatican Secret Archives one of the world's most secure buildings, and what is so secret about it?
All right, so the Vatican Archives is one of the world's most secure buildings. Maybe people might not know that, but this is a fact. This is one of the world's most secure building that you cannot get into when it comes to advanced technology, security, anything like that. Continue for us.
When you think of the Vatican Secret Archives, images of cryptic documents and buried secrets come to mind. But that is not all you can find in one of the largest collections of historical documents. The Latin translation of the word archives is archium secretum. However, contrary to popular belief, it has little to do with the English meaning of the word secret.
Continue.
In fact, the Latin word secretum refers more to something being private or personal rather than secretive.
Which I don't understand. It was something secret or private is private or personal. That's why it's secret. But continue.
How was the Vatican Secret Archives built? In the first century of Christianity, the Catholic Church was already preserving a substantial collection of records, also known as the Holy Scrinium or the Charterium. It is usually voyaged with the existing pope. The vast majority of these documents are now misplaced. However, we know about them through references in later works. Originally, the Catholic Church's archival materials were kept at the Lateran Palace, then the official papal residence. By the 11th century, the archives were transferred to three discrete locations: the Lateran, St. Peter's Basilica, and the Palatine Palace.
All right, so they started to bring the materials and they spread them apart to three different places: the Lateran, St. Peter's Basilica, and the Palatine Palace once again. So continue for us.
Between the 11th and the 13th centuries, a large part of these archives vanished. During the 1404 sack of the Vatican, papal registers and historical documents were thrown into the streets, and Pope Innocent VII fled the city. His successor, Pope Gregory XII, apparently sold off a large number of archival resources in 1406, including some of the papal registers.
All right, so there is going back onto the Vatican, and the people or whoever threw a lot of the records into the streets. They lost records. The Pope sold some of the records. So a lot of things was happening to the records. All right, continue for us.
In 1612, Pope Paul V ordered all Catholic Church records to be collected in a single location.
All right, so it was 1600, the 16th century, that Pope V ordered them to be returned. Any document that's Catholic needs to come back into this one location. All right, so continue for us.
Who can access the Vatican's secret archives? 19th century developments. In 1867, individual scholars were granted access to the manuscripts relating to the trial of Galileo. However, scholarly access was briefly interrupted after the dissolution of the Papal States in 1870. The biggest reason behind limited access was the concern that Protestant scholars might use their access to defame or embarrass the Catholic Church.
All right, so this is what we have it here. Going back to what I told you, that why someone would ban books or hide books is that, they believe someone's going to use the book back at me. All right, and I've seen that happen where someone who's a leader of the church, someone you came and brought up a book that's kind of outside but they kind of deal with, and you use it against me. I'm going to show you that that book is bad now. It's no more good no more. All right, and that's what they did. They're like, we know these Protestants, they're trying to come up with a doctrine against us. They're going to come in here and try to get books from the records and try to defame, embarrass, say things about us. No access to the library. All right, continue.
In 1879, Pope Leo XIII appointed archivist Cardinal Joseph Herring-Rother, who recommended allowing access to historians. Eventually, the archives were opened on January the 1st, 1881, to allow research that was impartial and critical. Access in the contemporary era. Although the archive has implemented policies that restrict access, popes have granted exceptions. For example, in 2002, Pope John Paul II allowed researchers access to documents from the historical archives related to the Holy See's relations with Germany. The objective was to put an end to speculation about the Catholic Church's relationship with the Nazi Party.
All right, so they were trying to connect the Catholic Church to the Nazi Party, and once again, they start giving access to the records to clear up the speculation that they have connections to the Nazi Party. All right, I have no comment at the moment. Continue.
The 2008 film Angels and Demons, adapted from Dan Brown's book, also depicts a visit to the archive. The Vatican opened the archives to a select group of reporters in 2010 to dispute the film's treatment. Since 2006, Members of the Archives Department have been organizing the projected 60 million pages of documents to prepare them for inspection by scholars.
All right, so 16 million pages of documents that have not been looked at by scribes and inscribed, that they're trying to prepare to start to finally get ready to see the world. You can see some of the stuff, some of the truth, some of the things that are originally scribed in the text so they can be translated accurately, interpreted and translated and taught correctly. That's why I always say that at the beginning. All right, we'll continue.
What makes the Vatican Secret Archives one of the world's most secure buildings?
All right, so what makes the Vatican Secret Archives one of the world's most secure buildings? We're going to go into what makes the building secure, its security. All right, so give it to us.
Although most state archives are accessible to the public, the Vatican Secret Archives is positioned strictly in a fortress-like part of the Vatican. It has over 1,200 years of historical documents and manuscripts.
All right, so the Vatican, first of all, it already has walls around it. But within the Vatican, it's at a separate part, fortress-like part of the Vatican, where you try to get in that library, it ain't gonna be possible. All right, continue.
The biggest factor that makes the archive secure is that these documents were completely out of bounds to anybody outside the inner circle of the Catholic Church before 1881.
All right, so before 1881, you could not even go look at that. You had to be in their inner circle to even go and get a glimpse of that. Continue.
It also has an underground vault known as the bunker, a version of which was reconstructed in the film Angels and Demons. Today, it is possible to request limited access. However, the process to get entry is among the severest anywhere in the world.
All right, so the process to get entry is among the severest anywhere in the world. I don't know if people know, but to even go visit the White House, you got to send them your ID, you got to send them all your stuff, you got to send them all your things and check into that, and then they make a thing for you to come there. You're not just coming there to be like, oh, I'm a tourist coming. But you're going there, they know your record, they know who you are, they know all of these things before you even got there. All right, continue.
Reporters, students, and amateur historians are prohibited from accessing the archives, and authorizations are only provided to academic researchers who have to renew their access request every 6 months. The archives are only accessible to scholars once they are 75 years old.
All right, so look at this. All right, so reporters, students, amateur historians prohibited from accessing the archives. Authorization are only provided to academic researchers who have to renew their access every 6 months. But on top of that, the archives are only accessible to scholars once they are 75 years old. Okay? So this person can't even study anymore. He's not even in his prime. He can't do anything anymore. All right? 75 years old, the individual has to be where he can get inside there and inscribe.
I wonder if it's wheelchair accessible.
Yeah, 75-year-old scribe. All right, and we know that the scribes of the day, they have to be young. They're learning new things. They're, you know what I mean? So they know methodically, hey, you're coming here, you're 75, you're already stuck in your ways. You're already stuck in what you know. You're not trying to bring out new doctrine. You know, you're trying to look at back then in the days and get some memories. All right. So 75 years old. Wow. Well, continue for us.
When authorized, academics enter the Vatican via a specific entry point that is secured by the Swiss Guard. They are ushered into the archives where they can access up to 3 pre-requested documents in a day.
All right, so they have millions of documents. You can only get 3. What do you want? Name your 3. You gotta know what you want. It's not come and look and pick out. Yo, you gotta know what you think we got. Tell me those 3. You can get those 3, and you're 75 years old, and the 75-year-old went by the Swiss Guard. So they're not playing any games when it comes to the secrecy of these records, that they don't want anyone to come and be a new scribe. All right, continue.
Another factor that makes the Vatican Secret Archives one of the world's most secure buildings is that even though personal computers are permitted into the archives, Photographing the content is prohibited. You will only see a few photographs of the 53 miles of archive shelving, mainly because it is open to researchers only.
53 miles. First of all, how is this 53 miles?
400 kilometers.
All right. That's how big the library is. You can't take pictures. No picture taken. Okay? That little picture you see, that's like at the front, or at the little top part, that's all you get to see. You cannot take a picture of the document. Once again, why? Because the document, they don't want you to inscribe new things. They don't want you to be a scribe. All right? They don't want you to be a scribe or inscribe new things. And this one goes back into Edmond Bordeaux, who the Essene Gospel of Peace came from. He was in the Vatican. He got to do that, all right? Having connects, all right, that allowed him to be able to get there, got his hand on a document, and then translate it for us. And this is how we have the Essene Gospel of Peace. And we know and understand that Christ was teaching about vegetarianism. All right, but how do we know that? We're able to prove that by going into the Bible and seeing in the scriptures where the doctrine adds up to that, all right? And we can explain why these other individuals are eating or doing these things, but we can see where the Bible, and especially in wisdom, it will never tell you to go and do that. Wisdom tells you, Proverbs 12:10, that a righteous man, cares for his animal, cares for the life of his beast. The tender mercies of the wicked is cruel, all right? So, the books will tell you the understanding that God has on it. But you have to differentiate from what's happening, what the people are doing, and what's recorded. All right, so this is the understanding on, these are the scribes today that are holding the documents. You cannot look at nothing. They don't want you to be able, and this is why it goes back to Enoch, to where you're saying there's a warning going out to the scribes about that. All right, and we're seeing that these people had a mission to collect documents and then act like they're going to study them, which we clearly see they're not coming out with no new thing, no new record, no new translation, no new understanding, no new nothing. All right, the individual, I forgot who stated it, but called them out and said they have a cemetery of books. All right, they're holding the stuff hostage. They don't want people to change what's scribed. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to go and take a look at the translators, the scribes, who scribed the King James Bible. All right, so they inscribed the King James Bible. And what they were doing this because the Vatican, or we should say the Catholic Church at that time, they were only allowing Latin translations. And Latin wasn't a language that a lot of the people spoke. And they were only allowing the Latin translations, and they were holding the things hostage and wouldn't allow people to translate. All right, that's what we're going to go into. So we're going to go into, and this is supposed to be in the cage because once again, they infiltrated Protestantism, all of that. And now the pages that were in King James Bible to show you why the thing was translated, that the translators left in there, they took that out the KJV Bible now. You can't even read it. You have to go get the original 1611 KJV to be able to read the translator's letter into why they're translating this into English. Because the stuff were being held hostage by the Vatican. They wouldn't allow anybody to translate it into their language. They wouldn't allow it to be translated outside of Latin. Because first of all, they believed other people were sinners and they don't really deserve to translate this into their language. All right, but we're going to go and look at the translators, the scribers of the KJV who written the message in the King James Bible, 1611, ordered to be translated by King James. And he gathered up all important scribes to bring about that important book. So this allows us to understand the importance of this record, knowing that Catholic would only allow it to be translated in Latin and was holding it hostage and wouldn't allow it to be translated in a language that today is worldwide. All right, so we're going to go to that.
To the Most High and Mighty Prince James, by the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith, the translators of the Bible wish grace, mercy, and peace through Jesus Christ our Lord. Excerpt, quote, "For when your highness had once out of deep judgment apprehended how convenient it was that out of the original sacred tongues, together with comparing of the labors, both in our own and other foreign languages, of many worthy men who went before us, there should be one more exact translation of the Holy Scriptures into the English tongue. Your Majesty did never desist to urge and to excite those to whom it was commended, that the work might be hastened and that the business might be expedited in a so decent a manner as matter of such importance might justly require."
All right. So here we see that they're stating that, and these are excerpts, all right? So these are, from the beginning to the thing, these are just excerpts, all right? That your holiness, out of deep judgment, apprehended how convenient it was that out of the original sacred tongues, we're comparing of the labors of their own and other foreign languages, that there should be an exact translation of the Holy Scriptures into the English tongue. All right, and just to note that the translations that they're going to get, or where they're going to be getting from, which we know, and this is why we look at the Aramaic and stuff, they were able to get from, what's the name again? What's that translation, those scribes' names? That we call them again? Masoretic text. All right, so the copy they got, they didn't get the best copy. They got the Masoretic text copy and said, yo, what we got, they probably, went into their own heads what they think is wrong or right, but that's the best version they had to copy out of. They weren't getting other texts from other people, weren't sharing stuff out their library like that, and you didn't have people who spoke all languages to be like, oh, I'm just going to send a language and we're going to copy out of that language. Translations took more work back then. All right, now computers do a lot of the translating. All right, but this is what was happening at those times. So continue for us.
"And now at last, by the mercy of God and the continuance of our labors, it being brought unto such a conclusion as that we have great hopes that the Church of England shall reap good fruit thereby, we hold it our duty to offer it to your Majesty, not only as to our King and Sovereign, but as to the principal mover and author of the work."
All right, so they gave it up to their Majesty, their King and Sovereign, the principal mover and author of the work. Not that he wrote it or thing, but that he's the one that said, yo, with his intelligence, his mind, to say this needs to be translated, interpreted, and taught correctly. All right, continue.
"Humbly craving of your most sacred Majesty, that since things of this quality have ever been subject to the censures of ill-meaning and discontented persons, it may receive approbation and patronage from so learned and judicious a prince as your highness is, whose allowance and acceptance of our labors shall more honor and encourage us than all the calumniations and hard interpretations of other men shall dismay us."
All right, so all the you get us that word, what that word mean. Calumniations and hard interpretations of other men shall dismay us. So other men have hard interpretations and calumniations. We're gonna get that word.
This is the definition here for let me get it out here. Calumniate, out of the Merriam-Webster dictionary, is verb 1, to utter maliciously false statements, charges, or imputations, and then 2, to injure the reputation of by calumny.
All right. So they were uttering false things. All right. That's what they're afraid of. The false things that's being uttered out the scriptures and the hard interpretations of other men that could dismay other people from reading the Bible, reading God's word, which they were already doing, which we see they tried their hardest to do that, but there's better that can be done. And this is why we go into other translation like the Aramaic, other things, and filter out things with going through various scriptures, doctrines, books to get a correct doctrinal understanding from the witnesses and testimonies given by the forefathers. All right, we'll continue.
So that if, on the one side, we shall be traduced by popish persons at home or abroad, who therefore will malign us, because we are poor instruments to make God's holy truth to be yet more and more known unto the people, whom they desire still to keep in ignorance and darkness. Or if, on the other side, we shall be maligned by self-conceited brethren, who run their own ways, and give liking unto nothing, but what is framed by themselves and hammered on their anvil.
All right, so once again, they put in here that the popish persons who are trying to malign them, all right, because they're trying to be vessels, instruments to make God's holy truth more known to people, all right, and they're pointing out that this is them pointing out specifically, that's why we went to the Catholic Church and the Vatican and their library, that they're trying to keep people in darkness, all right? They don't want people to know more and more the words of the Lord, more and more accuracy, all right? And by keeping people in darkness, they mean keeping the books and not translating them, allowing people to look after them, study from them, anything like that, all right? And this was being pointed out 11 times by the translators, the scribes of the KJV Bible, and telling you why they're translating it. And we know the text that they translated out of. They had one copy of the text that they're translating. They got the Masoretic text. The Masoretic text has different inconsistencies in it, which allowed us later on to be scribes ourselves to look at that and be like, you know what? This is inscribed inaccurately. There's other things missing through here. And we don't have a book of our own, but we put it together through doctrine and show people and go through the various books to show the different inconsistencies. All right, but continue for us.
The unwillingness of our chief adversaries that the scripture should be divulged in the mother tongue.
All right, so they did not want, once again, we're seeing the Catholic, they don't want no one to look at the records. They did not want this to be translated into the mother tongue. They did not want it to be translated into English at all. And we're going to get into a little of what was going on there. All right.
Now the Church of Rome would seem at the length to bear a motherly affection towards her children, and to allow them the scriptures in their mother tongue. But indeed it is a gift, not deserving to be called a gift, an unprofitable gift. They must first get a license in writing before they may use them, and to get that, they must approve themselves to their confessor, that is, to be such as are, if not frozen in the dregs, yet soured with the leaven of their superstition.
All right, so this is them telling you what they got to go through, all right? So what the problem is here is, once again, that we're understanding that different people have different languages, and they were in control of the records, and they were only allowing the records to be into their mother tongue, and they wouldn't allow other churches from other places, because we have Spain, we have France, we have all these different other people, languages. They wouldn't allow the record to be translated into that main language. They're like, you got to come and you got to learn Latin. That's what you got to do. You got to come to the Latin translation. We're not translating nothing out of here for you guys. We're not letting anybody come see the records to translate out of there, to inscribe out of there. All right? So England fought for that, the Church of England, all right? They fought for that, and as I'm telling you, they got the Masoretic text, which they were able to transcribe for us. To shows you how much records they're hiding, that they had. They still had a tainted record that they're able, but it wasn't, it's tainted, but it's good enough to get the doctrine of God out of it. All right, but continue first. Actually, hold on. So they had to, before they could do that, they had to get a license in writing before they could use them. And before they could get this license, this individual had to be approved by his confessor. So whoever he confesses sins to within the Catholic Church got to approve him, which means you already got to be under their superstitions, because you got to be confessing and believing that they could cover your sins and all that to even reach to that point where you could have an opportunity to get a chance to translate something into your mother tongue.
So Archbishop Shamar, we're not confessing our sins to Christ. license to marry to see if we are approved to do certain things.
Here, this is the Catholic Church doctrine. So they have a confessor. All right, you got to prove yourself to the confessor. But continue.
Howbeit, it seemed too much to Clement the Eighth that there should be any license granted to have them in the vulgar tongue, and therefore he overruled it and frustrated the grant of Pius the Fourth. Upon the rule of Pius the Fourth, his making in the Index, Library Prohibited, page 15, so much are they afraid of the light of the Scripture, that they will not trust the people with it, no, not as it is set forth by their own sworn men, no, not with the license of their own bishops and inquisitors. Yea, so unwilling they are to communicate the Scriptures to the people's understanding in any sort, that they are not ashamed to confess that we force them to translate it into English against their wills.
All right, so they are trying so hard, unwilling. So once again, they don't want it to be put into vulgar translations, all right? People's other language. They don't believe these languages is righteous. None of that. You got to come to the Latin, all right? And they admit and say that the church, the English church, forced them to translate that into the English. That was against the Catholic Church will. They never wanted that to go into English, which clearly we see in studying is able, and people are able to understand it more. They don't want people to understand the Scriptures. And we went to Ezra, the righteous scribe that was always ready and able and wanted people to understand and communicate to them the understanding of God, try to translate it better for you, try to make you understand better. The Catholic Church is on their one translation and that's it. Nothing to your language, nothing come to us. Learn our language, learn our translation, learn from our scribes. Your scribes can inscribe it and try to teach it to their people. All right, continue.
This seemeth to argue a bad cause or a bad conscience or both. Sure we are that it is not that he that hath good gold that is afraid to bring it to the touchstone, but he that hath the counterfeit. Neither is it the true man that shunneth the light, but the malefactor, lest his deed should be reproved. Neither is the plain dealing merchant that is unwilling to have the weights or the met yard brought in place, but he that useth deceit. But we will let them alone for this fault, and return to translation.
All right. So they were showing that, oh, the merchant is not the one unwilling to have weights. Why would the merchant? Because the merchants at those times, they're selling you peas or whatever. People go to the grocery store, they still have it. If you want to be old school or if you want to be new school, you could go weigh your stuff, right? And you have to weigh, make sure you're getting, everything's accurate. And when they go there, they have the weight there to make sure, hey, everything's getting their fair thing. That's what someone does who's not trying to burn you. When they're trying to burn you, they pop up with you and they're like, yo, I forgot the weights. I don't have it on me. All right. They don't want you to have that. So that's the thing where they're saying where they're collecting books and putting them away. That's showing their guiltiness. All right. Because no merchant you go to them and they don't have no weights around. Like, how am I supposed to know what the thing is? You know what I'm saying? Clearly, you're trying to lie to me and put this deception on. All right. So once again, you know all about that. People who do things like that or like products like that, weights is very important. All right. We see even in the streets, someone get their stuff and, illegal drugs or whatever, and it's not weight. This is big problems. All right. Only deceivers don't have these things that could assure accuracy is there. And that's the problem when you can't see an original text. You can't ensure, hey, is this correct? It's like you going to buy something that needs to be weighed and there's no scale. You have to just take their word for it. That, they scaled it right and it's right. You can't take no one's word. You got to put it on the scale. All right, so we're going to go to Luke 5, St. Luke 5:27.
It's the book of St. Luke, chapter 5, starting at the 27th verse. And after these things he went forth and saw a publican named Levi sitting at the receipt of custom. And he said unto him, Follow me. And he left all, rose up, and followed him. And Levi made him a great feast in his own house, and there was a great company of publicans and others that sat down with them. But their scribes and Pharisees murmured against his disciples, saying, Why do ye not eat and drink with publicans? Why do ye eat and drink with publicans and sinners? And Jesus answering said unto them, They that are whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance.
All right, so I went to this because at this time, Christ has a different attitude. And what we're seeing is the attitude that was being passed on, especially from the Catholic Church, was that if you're not a part of me, I believe you're a sinner. And if you're a sinner, you're a disgust to me. And if you're a disgust to me, I'm not teaching to you. I'm not talking to you. You're not getting translation. You're not getting anything like that. And this was the attitude that was present even when Christ was on the scene. That they weren't there to go to the people to be like, hey, you know what? I think, you know what? Let me talk to you. Let me share some light with you. They're all like, these people are that. Stay away from them. Separate from them. Don't deal with them. Don't give them nothing. Don't translate nothing to them. Don't teach nothing to them. That's just what they are. They're a sinner. And Christ is like, you know what? These people need help. I'm around them to help them, to translate to them, to tell them about the law, to let them read better properly, to tell them what I see, to interpretate for them. All right? So the vibration, and this is what people don't understand in this world, is that the leaders of this world look at people who are not in Christ as sinners in this way. And there's a certain attitude that people in high authority, or these type of people who are in authority that have this freedom and liberty from Christ, look at other individuals and how they treat them. And this is what Christ was showing was happening there, that they start separating themselves and keeping the secrets among themselves and casting you out as a sinner, and that you deserve the worst of the worst. And Christ is giving a different attitude, is if they're a sinner, that's who I need to go to, because they need the help. They need a physician. All right? And they were taking that stance. All right? So the scribes were hiding the law from people and didn't want to heal them in any way. And this is what's happening today. That many people don't know that you're not getting the blessings of Christ. You're not getting these things. People are looking at you as a sinner. This is why you have certain laws that are placed on you, certain things that are done to you, and why you're kept out the loop with a lot of things. All right, so we're going to go to St. Luke 25:1.
Book of St. Luke, chapter 25, starting right at the top, verse 1. Then drew near unto him all the publicans and sinners for to hear him. And the Pharisees and scribes murmured, saying, This man receiveth sinners and eateth with them. And he spake this parable unto them, saying, What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he lose one of them, doth not leave the 99 in the wilderness, and go after that which is lost until he find it? And when he had found it, he laid it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he cometh home, he calleth together his friends and neighbors, saying unto them, Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. I say unto you that likewise joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repenteth, more than over 99 just persons which need no repentance.
We're going to go to Luke 11.
It's the book of St. Luke, chapter 11, starting at the 44th verse. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye are as graves which appear not, and the men that walk over them are not aware of them. Then answered one of the lawyers and said unto him, Master, thus saying thou reproachest us also. And he said, Woe unto you also, ye lawyers, for ye laid men with burdens grievous to be borne.
All right, so he's speaking to the lawyers, all right? And then answered one of the lawyers. So he's there with the scribes and the Pharisees, and a lawyer answered. Who do you think the lawyer was out of the scribes and the Pharisees? All right, he was the scribe. So a lawyer, once again, we've been saying, is a scribe. So a lawyer said, all right, to him, Master, thus saying, thou reproachest us also. He said, Woe unto you also, you lawyers, For you laid men with burdens grievous to be burned. You put heavy burdens on the people, all right? Like you'll go and allow them or allow a company and look over the contract and everything, allow them to put an interest rate on somebody that that they can't handle, all right? And you know that the law, you could adjust that. You know that there's laws to even take that away, all right? But you laying it on to people, all right? But continue.
And ye yourselves touch not the burdens with one of your fingers. Woe unto you, for ye build the sepulchres of the prophets, and your fathers kill them. Truly ye bear witness that ye allow the deeds of your fathers, for they indeed killed them, and ye build their sepulchres. Therefore also said the wisdom of God, I will send them prophets and apostles, and some of them shall slay and persecute, that the blood of all the prophets which was shed from the foundation of the world may be required of this generation. From the blood of Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, which perished between the altar and the temple, verily I say unto you, it shall be required of this generation. Woe unto you, lawyers, for ye have taken away the key of knowledge. Ye entered not in yourselves, and them that were entering in ye hindered.
All right, so woe unto you, lawyers, for you have taken away the key of knowledge. The key of knowledge, wisdom, understanding, the law of God. They've taken away the law of God. Even up from that point till now, we can see that the law of God is taken away out of emphasis. All right, the law of God has been taken away. All right, and they themselves shut it up and don't allow people to look at it. So once again, we see from the Vatican, they shut up the key of knowledge. They shut up the records, the books. They don't go into the records themselves, all right? But they hinder others from getting them with the world's most secure, elaborate, library that you can't get into and that they don't study out of and they don't release books out of. They don't release new versions, new translations, nothing. All right, continue.
Verse 53, and as he said these things unto them, the scribes and the Pharisees began to urge him vehemently and to provoke him to speak of many things, lying wait for him and seeking to catch something out of his mouth that they might accuse him.
All right. And this is what scribes and Pharisees do. All right. And he said these things unto them, and the scribes and Pharisees began to urge him vehemently to provoke him to speak of many things. So they're like, yo, talk. And this is why they say, whatever you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. All right. So this is why if you're going to attack these type of people, you got to know what you're doing, because people show you that, okay, if you have artists, celebrities, stars, you start to speak against these people, they're going to be like, oh yeah, talk more, say more. We're going to look at what you're doing. We're going to look at the history. We're going to look at, did you file your taxes? Every single thing we're going to look at, because we want to catch you in some inconsistency to persecute you right now. This is why when you're a public celebrity, it's a big thing, because now we're of the public, so they can see, but they're not really paying attention to you. When you're on the scope, every little thing in your life, you'll see what you're doing right or wrong now, because as you look, someone's like, he can't do that. You can't do this. Your whole life is now magnified into things that no one would have looked at. You're like, yo, you can't do that.
Even from years back too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from years back. They're like, look at this person did this. They jail walked. They did that purpose. They got a video of, yo, he broke that law. Punish him now. All right? So when you're in the public eye, you get punished for things that somebody who's not in the public eye won't. So they're just like, yo, you did something that's against the law. You have to be punished. You're an example. Yeah. Right? If you're not in the eye of the public, then, yo, I did that. I did these 1-2 things that's not with the law. No one's going to punish you. But once you're in the public, that becomes public that you did that. They want penalty for that. Yeah, publicist things. So they make sure that whatever you're putting out there, it's correct, because someone could catch it. And yo, they will try to get you if you're speaking against people. So because Christ is saying all these things, the Pharisees are watching his words. Like, I want to catch you say one blasphemy, one thing, inaccurate thing you say, it's over for you. And they didn't even do that. And they still made up, yo, he said this, he said that. Make up gossip. That's where gossip comes in now. All right? I think that he did that. He said that and he didn't say that.
Casting out devils by the prison.
Yeah, he cast out devils by the prison. That's blasphemy. That's gotta stone him now. All right, so this is what they were doing, and this is why it's very serious that when you're starting to do these things, and this is what they warn you, someone's trying to do, and there's a lot of people trying to do this, secure creditor, different processes. Be careful what you're doing, because they're now going to watch to make sure, just like they did with Christ, what are you saying? How much things are you saying? What are you putting out there? Is it accurate and on point? Because if it's not, you're getting persecuted. All right, so we're going to go to the definition of lawyer.
So definition for lawyer, strong definition for lawyer, Greek word G3544, nomikos, from G3551, according or pertaining to law, that is legal, ceremonial, as noun, an expert in the Mosaic law, about the law, lawyer.
All right, so a lawyer is supposed to be an expert in the Mosaic law of Moses, as we know, which is the law of God. If the lawyer is not an expert in the law of God, then most likely he's a lawyer of this world, and a lawyer of this world is commissioned and licensed. All right, someone who's dealing with the law of God, they are authorized. All right, they are commissioned by God, by the Spirit to do so, not man. So they're not commissioned by man, they're commissioned by God. All right, as we've seen with Ezra in the KJV. So Ezra, once again, that would be the translation that went into the Greek library. All right, so we can see the difference. So even for me, for a while, I didn't know. I'm like Ezra's, and I didn't know it was Ezra for a while, because at that time when I'm just reading, I'm not really differentiating the languages. So I'm like, who's this Ezra? In this next book, and what Ezra of the Bible is Ezra's. All right, that's just Ezra in the Greek translation. All right, so we're gonna go to the Beauvier's law definition of lawyer.
This is out of the Beauvier's law definition. Beauvier's law dictionary, 1856. Lawyer, a counselor, one learned in the law. Vide, attorney.
All right, so once again, lawyer today, still one learned in the law. But what they don't have there, one learned in the law of God, in the law of Moses. They don't have that there. Just one learned in the law. What law? What law is the base law for all of them? It's the law of God. All right, so they have to be learned in the law of God, not just learned in the law. But that's what it's going to today. All right, so we're just going to go and wrap it up. Since we've been talking about lawyers and we ended off with lawyers and Christ spoke on the lawyers, we're going to go to what is the Bar Association. We're going to go to the Bar Association, because that's what lawyers are coming out of today, modern day lawyers. So let's just get a little understanding on that as we wrap everything up.
What is the Bar Association? Bar Association, also called legal association, group of attorneys, whether local, national, or international, that is organized primarily to deal with issues affecting the legal profession. In general, bar associations are concerned with furthering the best interests of lawyers. This may mean the advocacy of reforms in the legal system, the sponsoring of research projects, or the actual regulation of professional standards. Bar associations sometimes administer the examinations that are required for admission to practice law, and they may supervise necessary apprenticeship programs.
All right, so Bar Association, also called legal association. They're a group of attorneys, whether local, national, international. So you have local association, national association, and you have international bar association. All right, and this is the group. So they made an association where they're like, you know what, we should make a company that regulates these type of people who is in this practice. Since the practice is so integral, we're gonna make a company that regulates the jobs of these positions. All right, and that's what we have with the Bar Association. And they say it's in the general, the Bar Association are concerned with the furthering of the best interests of lawyers. So furthering the best interests of lawyers. All right, and that means advocacy of reforms, sponsoring research, different things. All right, but we know, and we'll get a little more of what they truly made this Bar Association for. But continue.
Their membership requires vary from country to country. In the United States, for example, law school graduates are admitted to a state bar association immediately after they pass a series of examinations, which are usually administered by examiners appointed by state courts. In Austria, on the other hand, it is necessary for a lawyer to have 7 years legal experience in order to be a member. Membership in the bar associations of many countries is often compulsory. In Japan, Nigeria, Israel, and France, and in more than half the states of the United States. For example, membership is required of all lawyers. On the other hand, in England, Norway, and Sweden, membership in such bar associations is voluntary.
All right, so some places have it voluntary, some places it's mandatory. All right, it's mandatory. And once again, because these people aren't coming from God and they're not learning the law of God, they are coming from ways that are commissioned by man. And the man controls those avenues that they're getting into the law through. So this is why they have to go and do whatever that state is saying, because they're not with the church. But just to go back and emphasize that this is how we have these lawyers and why we have to beware, because now, as we seen from last week, lawyers and people who were studying the law and were scribes, they had to know the Bible. They had to be religious. You had to be a priest. These people are not priests. They just have to go to an association and have the association run them. And that's what disconnects them, because the scribes of today are not connected to the law of God, as I've been showing. We'll continue.
Many bar associations have disciplinary powers over their members, but actual procedures for disbarment, relieving an attorney of his license to practice, are usually carried on in court. In France, for example, the major responsibility for disciplining attorneys belongs to the Cour de Cassation. There are many international associations of lawyers, the most prominent being the International Bar Association, a voluntary group of national bar associations and some individual lawyers, which is dedicated, among other things, to achieving uniformity in certain areas of law.
All right, so this is the bar association that's coming up, and they're able to put disciplinary powers over their members and disbarment. All right, so bar them from there and take away their practices. And it's funny because, once again, what people don't understand is that we're still in the biblical days, and this is why I've been holding down on that. Real scribes are connected to the Bible, because the people who are the scribes I've been pointing out, they're the Catholic Church, all right? The Vatican, they're the true scribes, all right? And they are the ones that really control people, all right? But they're behind the scenes, and they allow these scribes to be the ones in the driver's seat, because they control these scribes, because these scribes come out of what they're taught to be able to tell people, then they can get disbarred. So that's why somebody, especially us, knowing, okay, we can do this and that, and when we go to a scribe now of this world, a lawyer, and we ask them, okay, can you do such and such? They don't want to do it, because why? They're going to lose their thing, because the law that they're under, they cannot do what we can do. They're restricted, all right? They're restricted from those things, all right? And this is the advantage that they have when somebody is signed up with the bar. They don't want to be disbarred. All right. So we're going to go to what is the first bar.
The first bar, as the legal profession continued to evolve and become more official in ancient Rome, it also became highly regulated. There were many rules around being lawyers that controlled how much a lawyer could charge, where they could plead a case, and how they could become registered with the court or bar. Before this time, any ordinary citizen could call themselves an advocate, in parentheses lawyer, but once the profession became more regulated, there was a very high standard to meet before being allowed to work as a lawyer, and the profession became only accessible to the higher classes.
All right, so once again, they breaking away. We're in the Roman culture, people breaking away from religion, breaking away from God, right? And people start calling themselves lawyers. Everyone start calling themselves a lawyer now, okay? And then once they're not supervised, they start charging high prices, because people don't understand, and you need to get this thing has to be done. Once somebody knows you can't go somewhere else and you have to do something, they know that they have something where they could charge you a lot. So they're like, where are you gonna go? So someone's there, they're like, yo, I need someone to represent me, to talk to the lawyer, to talk to the judge, to get me out of here. He don't know what to say to the judge to get himself out of there. So now the lawyer's like, yo, it's gonna cost you $7,000 to retain me to get you out of there, buddy. So let's go have a conversation with the guy real quick. Right? You're like, 7,000 just to talk to him real quick? Yeah, 7,000. Or you might have a document that you need to make, all right, to send to the judge. He's like, yo, you want to send the judge a document? You want to write in something? For that document now, that's $10,000 for that important document. Okay, there's some documents that cost that much just for them to write them a writ, which they make it seem like an important document that you can't do. You send it off and write it to the judge. It's just a writing of the document, translating, and just people don't have that understanding, right? But they're able to charge a lot for that. Before they even come to you, like, what do you want me to do? You need a commission. Before you even do that, first of all, you want to talk to me? Pay up before you even talk to me, show me you're serious. All right? $500 for the hour. Okay? This is what happens when, it starts going from there. So they start charging arm and a leg to people. So continue.
A matter of fact, Rome developed a class of specialists known as jurisconsulates, who were wealthy amateurs who dabbled in law as an intellectual hobby, advocates and ordinary people who went to jurisconsulates for legal advice. An interesting side note, in ancient Rome, notaries did not have any legal document management skills. In fact, they had no legal training and were barely literate, but they could draft wills, conveyances, and contracts cheaply. They were also known for drawing simple transactions in convoluted legal jargon as a way of making more money since they were paid by the line.
All right, and that's kind of like today's public notary. All right, so most of them, they don't know the law or anything like that, but they're just paid to stamp your thing and that's it. Oh, where are you going?
It's more like this, cover your eyes and...
Yeah, boom. I don't know what you drew. I don't know what you did, but I'm getting paid. All right, so, and it's cheaper. So they go, yeah, cheaper. You go to a lawyer to do that. The lawyer is going to have to look over that, do all this. So they send you to somebody who's just going to go boom, boom, stamp. They're in the business of this quick, fast. I didn't give them no legal advice, none. Write it on there. I just confirmed that this is what, they've written and is their signature, all of that. All right, and that's cheaper. But when you go to a lawyer, it's more in depth. The lawyer doesn't just do that. He has to take it and look at it and do all of that now. All right, the notary makes sure he tell you, I didn't give you no legal advice. I was not your lawyer. I did not interpret any law for you. I did not put anything into this document. I didn't do nothing for you. All right, so we see a little of that in those times. All right, and it's starting off in Rome once again, because Rome is where they had the separation from really their religion. So they have some people that deal with religion, they have some people that's not, and that's why they have two separate societies per se that started off in Rome. A lot of people weren't really religious, and this is how we're getting scribes who weren't religious. Scribes who weren't religious start coming out of Rome. Okay, usually a scribe is connected directly with religion and religious texts. All right, but continue.
Learning something different now.
Okay,
American history.
yeah, that's under the same thing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
American history of lawyers. When did lawyers first start practicing in the United States? It's important to understand that the history of attorneys is filled with changes and fluctuations. In order for a society to need lawyers, there must be a certain level of advancement. This means that the first lawyers didn't immediately appear in the Americas when the British colonies were established.
All right, so when British colonies first got here, there were no lawyers around. All right, so you need a certain advancement to have lawyers that dealing with people and all of that. All right, but continue.
And many people in the colonies were hostile to lawyers, even more hostile than the people were in Europe. Some colonies outlawed lawyers, and where lawyers were allowed to practice, they were tightly regulated and allowed to charge only a small fee.
All right, so at that time they knew how deadly a lawyer is, especially if this is one of the lawyers from the Roman Church. Okay? They gonna come in here, they gonna start to do all types of things with the law, all of that. So now they're watching lawyers, and then they're like, yo, we're regulating you with your charges, because we know the instinct that lawyers do. They like to overcharge now. So this is what was happening. So when these things are just coming up, they're making sure you gotta charge cheap prices, buddy. And we're watching you guys to make sure what you guys are doing, because lawyers are very dangerous. That's why people are just acting, oh, this is a lawyer, it's just a lawyer. Lawyers are dangerous. They're the ones that's crafting this whole society with laws and everything. Yes.
Liars.
Yes, liars. All right. We'll continue.
As the colonies began to thrive financially, the need for lawyers grew, but most lawyers were untrained, and a client was simply taking a risk on the quality of a lawyer they hired.
All right. And that's why they have all the bar, they have all of this, so you can go look at the lawyer's his history, how well he is, all of that. All right. Because once again, we had people not connected to the church just trying to be a lawyer. A lawyer was always well learned. So how is they're a lawyer but not well learned? All right. This went hand in hand with a lawyer. All right. But continue.
In Massachusetts, there was no special training required to be a lawyer until 1761, when the bar formed an association and required that lawyers have 7 years training before they can practice law. The bar also established professional ethics that all lawyers were required to follow. Eventually, the prejudices against lawyers started to fall away, and the legal profession began to gain respect and power. 25 of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence were lawyers. Lawyers were being trained in courts, and eventually, after the American Revolution, bars were established across the country, and the education of lawyers became formalized.
All right. So 25 of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence were lawyers, someone who read in the law. And even when we're looking at it, because once again, the interpretation could always be better, they didn't understand what they were doing at that time, because their interpretation, how they interpreted it, opened up a scope for other things to happen, where they could have made it more cemented, that only Christian could be allowed here, when they're all Christian at that time. Why did you word it in a way where somebody else would come in and do their religion there too? All right, so there's just certain things where, if they had a better lawyer or better advice in the legal interpretation, that it would be more protected in this day, all right, as people get more advanced and learned. We'll continue.
Centuries before legal practice management software was around, the first law degree granted in the United States was a Bachelor of Law in 1793 by the College of William and Mary. The degree was called an LB and eventually was called an LLB. In the 1850s, many small law schools were established by lawyers in the United States, paving the way for aspiring lawyers to get the education they needed to practice.
All right. And we went into the history, especially with the doctors and all of that how the Catholic Church controls is that they give license to the school, and then people don't know the school got license from the Catholic Church, and then you got license from them, right? So they gave license to them to teach people these things in their school, and then these people in the school get license from them to go out and do further things. All right. So this is the history of scribes, all right, which are lawyers, people who deal with the law and record out of the law, God's law. All right. We're just going to go to 2 scriptures and we're going to end it out. So we're at Sirach 10 and 4.
It's the book of Ecclesiasticus, also known as Sirach or the Apocrypha, chapter 10, verse 4. The power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord, and in due time he will set over it one that is profitable.
All right. So the power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord. In due time, he will set over one that is profitable. Continue for us.
Verse 5, in the hand of God is the prosperity of man, and upon the person of the scribe shall he lay his honor.
All right. So when the scribe is doing the things of God, the honor is back onto him. And you'll see, because if a scribe is able to come to you and describe and tell you, you know what? In the law of God, you know what? Really, this home is your home. You're like, oh, I love you, scribe. Oh, yeah. This is what the scribes can be doing, and helping people out in understanding the law and their rights, right? And their how God looks at these things, all right? People will lay their honor onto them because they love that. Right now, we're getting our honor laid on because we're trying to help people when it comes to rights with exemptions, making sure that their rights are being protected, affirmed, and people are happy about that when they're getting taught and they're shown, hey, these are your rights, this is what it looks like, this is what God said, and you lay it all out for them so that they can understand that. All right, it's a different vibration that gives. So we're at 1 Corinthians 1 and 18.
For the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us which are saved, it is the power of God.
All right, so the preaching of the cross. The reason why I went to this is because, once again, a lawyer, a scribe, It's supposed to be dealing with the preaching of God. But when you speak to most of these lawyers, they don't even believe in God. They're like, you know what? You got to tell me because I don't believe in God. I don't deal with that stuff. So how are you a lawyer? All right, because they believe that the preaching of Christ, it's foolishness to them. All right. So they now are saying we don't need that in order to do that. And now you have people studying the law, but not the law of God. I don't know what law they're studying then, but they're studying some law. All right. Regular laws that they don't know these laws are based on the law of God. But they're studying it without the religious belief behind it. All right, so continue.
Verse 19, for it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and will bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent.
All right, so he will destroy the wisdom of the wise. Who's the wisdom of the wise? Who's the wise? It showed us who's the wise. Scribes were considered to be the wise people of the world. All right, kings who are monarchs and up there and high, they weren't even this. They're calling the scribe that. Because the king, as we know, even through Nebuchadnezzar, they need someone to, hey, can you translate the dream for me? Can you translate this record for me? Can you do these things for me? So they're not as wise themselves. All right, continue.
Verse 20, where is the wise?
All right, where is the wise?
Where's the scribe?
Where's the scribe? Once again, always attaching the scribe to this. Continue.
Where is the disputer of this world?
The disputer, they're supposed to be in disputes, disputing these things for people, doing these things for people. Where are these people? Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of the world? They're supposed to be arguing these things for us, backing us up with the law of God. Continue.
Hath not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? For after that, in the wisdom of God, the world by wisdom knew not God. It pleased God by the foolishness of preaching to save them that believe.
All right, so we showed you that all these people, all right, God made foolish the wisdom of this world. They're dealing with only the wisdom of this world, and that's why they're not readers or studiers of the law of God. All right, and God said after that, in the wisdom of God, the world by wisdom knew not God. So they don't know God. So when we're speaking to these scribes now, because they don't know the law of God, they don't know God. They're like, I don't know that. I don't know that was in the Bible. I didn't know that. They have to study these things to know that. All right, and God shows us that through the preaching, through the foolishness of preaching, which a lot of these people will look at it because they're in their mind, oh, I know all of this. I know all these academic stuff. But they look at the cross and the Bible and the gospel of Christ as foolishness. And it's these simple things that people might overlook. These things that are not major in the world, but God made them major in his world, all right, that bring you to life and everlasting. All right, so that being said, once again, hope everybody understood the history that we went through when it comes to scribes, all right, what a scribe is. Once again, the scribal instrument, all right, is a very sharp instrument, better than any pen, any other outlining, because those outlinings are a little thicker. The scribal one is very exact and on point, that somebody can make an outline and it be the exact outline. All right, and that's what a scribe was to do. They were to copy exactly the words of the Lord. All right, we went into the scribe being bodies of teachers, interpreters of the law. We went to scribe, Ezra's the righteous scribe, and how he operated, always being ready in the law of Moses to give on to people. We went into the prophecy against scribes given to us by Christ, saying beware of them. We went into Enoch, saying to beware of the scribes and the writings and all that would happen. We went into the New Testament that warned about people trying to come and corrupt the revelations. And then we put emphasis on the scribes of today, and we honed in on the Vatican Church and their library and their starting. And we've seen that they are the scribes of today with the most elaborate library. And they made it a mission to go collect all ancient documents, and they don't allow people to go and look at the actual original text to become a scribe and inscribe correctly. And we went into the KJV, the 1611, how that got translated into the English, understanding that these people who collected up all the documents, all God's records, now was holding them hostage, saying you could only read in the Latin, in their tongue, and they wouldn't allow it to be put into other mother tongues. The English fought against that, and they got a copy of the record, and they got the Masoretic text, which still not the best copy, but they did the best they could to bring us a translation that we can reach here as the Essene Community Church of Christ with understanding through that, those documents, those same documents. So all praises, and thank you to them and for God making this happen. All right, because we see here scribes of this world don't want you to understand the law of God. All right, they've been hiding it for a while. The library that we honed in on the Vatican Library and the Archives, they're the most secured in the world. You have to be 75 years old before you can go and even study a book out of there. And you can only get 3 at a time.
75-year-old scholar.
75-year-old scholar. And you have to already know what book they got in there before ahead of time. Or maybe they give you a little transcript, I don't know, but the way it's seen in there, you got to know ahead of time, let them know before you reach there. All right, these are the 3 books you're allowed to see. So you have to be 75-year-old scholar. And we know that the scriptures teach that when you're older, you're more stuck in your understanding. So you're not there to learn and think. You know, they know the age group that they're letting in. They don't want no new learners. All right, and this is how the scribes are operating of today. In such secrecy and hiding from people and not allowing them to be interpreted the law of God. So when you see people or brothers here giving you the understanding of the law of God and breaking it down for you intricately, you have to appreciate that, because this is why people don't believe in the records, because nobody's in church. They're like, you know what? They're sinners anyway. They don't care. I don't need to go outside and explain or break nothing down to you. You're going to live your life anyway. And that's the attitude they had in Christ's time, where they're like, you're with the sinners. Why are you talking to them? Why are you breaking stuff down to them? Why are you sitting and eating with them and talking to them? They don't care anyways. All right. So with that being said, we're going to go to Philippians 4 and 8.
It's the book of Philippians chapter 4, starting at the 8th verse. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. Those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you.
All right. So be aware of the scribes. You dwell on that. You be aware of the scribes, and you watch the scribes. The God of peace shall be in your life. Because it's the scribe that's taken out the God of peace out of your life and putting in the God of war, tribulations. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to say all praises be unto the Most High Almighty. Ahaya Yeshua Christ, our Lord and Savior, who the world calls Jesus Christ. All right. Translated as God saves, Ahaya saves. Bless his holy name. This is the Essene Community Church of Christ. My name is Archbishop Shamar.
And I'm Bishop Arai.
And that was our Sabbath report / lesson for this week. That was Pen of the Scribes Part 2. And that is the completion of our Pen of the Scribes lesson. All right. So God bless. All praises be unto you. Everybody enjoy the rest of the Sabbath. Enjoy the Lord's Day tomorrow, as we do acknowledge both of the Christian holy days. All right. So peace and blessings. Happy Sabbath.
Blessings, blessings, blessings.